Hello, welcome. It's Ace here at Metropolis Studios. Today we are going to talk about effects pedals. Obviously there's hundreds and millions of effects pedals in the world and I do own most of them, but I don't use them all live. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the ones I use and how I use them. They're quite subtle in their sounds, they're not really over the top, but they work really well in a live scenario, and also this same set of pedals I can use over 5 or 6 albums worth of material. So if we look down on the floor at the moment, we can see that I do have a switching box here. All right? The switching box will switch from 2 amps. It'll have a clean sound and a dirty sound. So if we've got, for instance, a distorted Marshall, it will go to one when it's on red. And if I switch it across here, it will go to my clean sounds. It bypasses all of the pedals when it goes to the clean sound. So it means it's not going through any of this stuff before it goes to the clean amp for the purest sound I can possibly get from the guitar. When it goes through the distorted amp, when I clip into this stage, it actually goes through all of these pedals. But the leads on these pedals are really good quality, so it's worth spending money on good leads. These are called Chord Company cables. They're probably the most expensive ones you can possibly buy, but you don't have to spend that much money, but always invest in good leads. Okay, so first pedals we're going to look at in the chain. Well, let's go from the bottom across. First one's not very exciting, but it's called a signal pad. Signal pad is a really good way of turning your volume down on your guitar while you're playing without actually having to touch the thing here, so the knob. So basically what we're going to do is it takes the gain down. So say I'm full on, so it mellows my guitar down. Works really well when you want to play verses, if you want to play picking sections, you know, chords that you don't want to be battering everyone to death with, okay? So signal pad is just a convenient way of turning down the guitar volume when I need it. Next up in the line, I love this. This is the pitchfork pedal. It does loads and loads of different things, different octaves, different intervals, but I use it for fifths. So when you're playing a root and fifth, maybe you play a chord like this. Right, so now with this pedal, I can take out the second finger and just play it with one note. So here's the normal note, here's a fifth on it. So it sounds the same as me playing 2 notes. Great thing about that is you can play fast riffs. So fifths on the pitchfork, that's what I use it for. Very good for fast riffs, big massive sounding riffs with one string that might be very difficult to play, playing 2 fingers root and fifths. Next up in my line is a good trusty overdriver. Overdrive pedals, fuzz pedals, distortion pedals. People can get a little bit confused in how they use them. I use a really good distorted amp sound. I've got a Marshall 900 in there through vintage greenback speakers. This is my normal sound. But if I want a bit more drive, but I don't want to lose the tone of the amp, but I need it to sustain a bit more for solos, be a bit more aggressive, I can use an overdrive pedal. And that's the kind of thing that won't change your original sound too much, but give you a lot of enhancement, rather than a fuzz or a distortion. Works in a different way. So let's have a look at the overdrive pedal. So there you go, it's got a lot more drive, a lot more sustain. That's my overdrive pedal, pushing it to another level. Next up is an actual fuzz pedal. Next pedal is called the Bone Shaker. Bone Shaker is a new pedal from Dodd. Dodd's a famous American company that have reissued a lot of old stuff, and they've come up with a bunch of funky things. So this is a fuzz pedal. Difference between the fuzz and the overdrive is, as we see, the overdrive kind of just enhances the normal sound. So the fuzz pedal is it's a bit more stoner-like. So it's a lot more drive, a lot more fuzzy, very, very distorted, and used in a more extreme situation. Okay, next up, going along my chain here, I think it's going to be the delay. So these pedals go around in a loop this way. The positioning of pedals in your chain is very important as well, because the way you position them, they sound different with the amp and also with each other when they react together. So I've spent a bit of time thinking about which ones work the best way around here. That's experimentation, a lot of fun for a late night on your own. So next up in my wonderful chain of pedals, I have a delay. When I'm using a delay on stage, I use it in all different ways. I use it for a lot of sound, I use it for subtle sounds, I use it for picking arpeggios to make them sound fuller as well, solos, and sometimes just like super long sustains, okay? At the moment, I've got it set up quite subtle actually. Let's have a listen. There we go. And as you can hear, the sound I've got on my delay is an analog delay. Being very spoddy here, analog delay decays in a different way. If it's digital, it will stay the same all the way until it fades out. If it's analog, you see it goes smaller and smaller and a little bit duller, like an old-fashioned delay pedal. There you go. We can hear it from the delays there. Good way for using a delay if you're distorted is solos, isn't it? There you go. So the joys of a delay pedal, and I added a bit of overdrive on there to give me more sustain. Next up in the chain, we have the envelope filter. This is an old one. It's a classic, and you can't buy them anymore. I've got a few and they've all broken through the years because the switch is on them. So this one, luckily enough, has survived. I use this quite a lot in different ways. An envelope filter, what it does is it changes the envelope. Yeah, not rocket science, but that means it's a bit like a wah-wah pedal. It changes the frequency of the sound, but it does it automatically. So you set it to how you want it. So where it opens and closes on the envelope is how I set it. So I've got it very similar to like an auto wah. So there you go, so like chords and solos. So there you go, there's an envelope filter for you. Next up, I've got, this one is a chorus stroke flanger. It's a Digitech new pedal. Chorus and flange are very good on clean sounds, so we may just touch on that in a minute. But for distorted sounds, it's very 80s. 80s is not bad if you live in Shoreditch at the moment. But what we find is it's a little bit kind of, well, you know, people will say, oh, it's a bit Bon Jovi and things like this. So it sounds a little bit dated on distorted guitars, but it can give a good chime to the chords if it's quite subtle. So this is without. Let's put it on. If I put my signal pad on and take it down. So it gives it a bit of a kind of shimmering sound, okay? So that's the chorus flange. Okay, coming near the end of the chain for the actual affected boxes, we have an octave pedal. Octave pedals I love, because being a single player in a band, they're really good. They fill the sound out. They're a little bit like the fifths, except for it puts an octave below and above the note you're playing. So it can make a single player sound like two people. So octaves are used a lot, and you'll find that a lot, especially in these kind of two-piece bands as well. Okay, first time I ever heard this pedal was years and years ago, and I saw it on TV and I fell in love with it. So let's hear an octave. Great sound, really good for solos as well. So that's the octave. Moving on, the last pedal in my chain here, well, it actually is two. There's a subtle one underneath, which is an output pedal, is a noise suppressor. So as you can hear, we have a bit of noise there. It's a buzz, it's from the amps, it's from the pedals. But if you use a noise suppressor, it can filter out this sound, but still give you the playability, okay? So it's a gate. It's silent, isn't it? So all along we've been listening to sounds. So now if I play the guitar, there's no sound, is there? So a noise gate is really essential, especially if you're a live player. Most players have noise gates, or they're built into their amps, or they have racks and things like that. So noise gate's really good. Underneath the noise gate, we have a dual output biz box. Okay, a biz box means that you can put two amps at the same time without getting the earth hum. Okay, so what I do is when I run the distorted sounds out of this board, they go into two different Marshall amps at the same time to give me a kind of like a stereo double player effect. But if I don't have the biz box underneath that suppressor there, it will buzz on one of the amps because of the earthing of them. So that takes out the buzz of the two amps. So basically at the moment I am actually running through two different amps in the room, and we don't get any buzz from that situation. And that is my setup, okay? There are millions of different pedals, which I may go into a bit later, but this one works for me across all of my rigs. This board on the floor especially as well is my flying rig. This is the one that I take when I go on a plane somewhere and I have to hire some amps, or it's a TV show, and I can take a broken down version and it fits in its kind of suitcase case. When I'm playing normally live, I have a Mike Hill board, who's a guy that makes amps and boards for lots of famous people. It's slightly different, it's got buffers in it, it's got a switching system, it's a bit more expensive, but the core of the pedals remains the same. Okay, there you go, that's my pedal board. That's how I use them, that's the sounds I get from there, and I hope that you enjoy getting into pedals yourself.